Thanks, Madam Deputy President. I want to share with the Senate the story of my dear friend Harry. Harry Gardner passed away on the 18th of February this year, aged 91. He had had prostate cancer for the last 13 years, and his health had been in decline over those 13 years. He'd done everything he could over those 13 years to keep himself healthy. And in fact, people often thought that Harry was a bit odd because of his focus on his health, baking his own bread, turning vegetarian in his later years. Harry was a humanist, he was a scientist, he was a musician. And he made the decision in his last years that, as somebody who had been focused on trying to make the world a better place, that his last campaign that he could be involved in was for voluntary assisted dying. I remember him ringing me up and saying, "Right, Janet, what can we do to make this a reality, both federally and in the Victorian Parliament?" He lobbied Victorian MPs across the spectrum. He played a very important role in the passage of the Victorian legislation that passed through the Victorian Parliament in November last year, just by being himself, by presenting himself as an older person who knew that he was going to die, who wanted to have the choice to be able to die in the manner of his choosing, to not have to die with the suffering and the pain of a death that he would have preferred to have had brought forward so that it could be peaceful and a good death. Harry died in February after the legislation was passed, but he died with the satisfaction of knowing that he had played an important role in seeing it passed. I saw Harry only a few days before he died, and my most delightful memory of him, having known him for all of my life essentially, was to play my violin. When I arrived at the hospital that he was in, he was sleeping and his son Henry was there, and Henry and I have played violin at numerous times over the years and played with Harry obviously many times. And so I got my violin out and Henry and I proceeded to play a beautiful folk piece, Ashokan Farewell, and Harry woke while we were playing and he just had this beautiful look on his face as he heard us playing Ashokan Farewell. He was quite lucid. In fact, Henry and Henry's sisters, Jenny and Gail, told me that that time that we had with him, he was the most lucid that he'd been for the last week. So it was such a privilege to be there for part of the last days of Harry's life. As I said, he died. He didn't, he was too early to be able to benefit from the voluntary assisted dying legislation in Victoria, and fortunately or not fortunately, he was not able to make use of it. And I think he probably wouldn't have made use of it because he ended up dying reasonably quickly without too much pain and suffering. But his determination, and the reason he put so much effort into campaigning, because he knew that he wanted to have the choice, that it was appropriate for him to have the choice, that all Australians should have the choice to be able to choose to go gently, to have a good death and not to have prolonged suffering. So, and that's what this is about. This legislation today is about all Australians having the choice, and particularly the right of the people who live in the Australian Capital Territory and in the Northern Territory to have the same rights as the rest of us, to at least to be able to have the debate. In Victoria, we had what was a very extensive debate that covered all of the issues that have been discussed in this debate that we're having today. All of the concerns that people have about voluntary assisted dying, the issues of it being a slippery slope, the issues of elder abuse, the issues of coercion, the issues of people not being in sound mind, and in particular the how voluntary assisted dying and palliative care operate side by side. And after that debate, Victoria has passed the legislation. They've got some of the most stringent legislation in the world in the jurisdictions that now have voluntary assisted dying, with so many checks and balances in place to address all of the issues that people are rightly concerned about. And the Victorian legislation doesn't come into play until the middle of next year, and I want to see all Australians to be able to benefit from that experience and that debate, and to be able to have the same debate themselves, so that otherwise we're in a situation where the people of the ACT and the Northern Territory, it is not right that they don't even have the opportunity to debate this legislation, to have that debate like they had, like that we were able to have in Victoria. So look, I am proud to be a Green and part of a party that has led the way on the issue of voluntary assisted dying for more than 10 years. In Victoria, our Greens MPs played a critical role in the passage of that legislation. And I want to have a big shout-out to my former state MP, Colleen Hartland, and Samantha Dunn, current state MP, for the massive work that they did, and thank them for the work that they did on leading the debate and being part of the debate in Victoria. But here in our federal parliament, we had Bob Brown's Private Members Bill right back in 1997. We had Richard Di Natale's bill right through to that of Richard Di Natale's bill on restoring territory rights. And that's the basis for this bill that's now being proposed by Senator Leyonhjelm. Senator Leyonhjelm's bill, which we are debating today, is essentially a Greens bill rewritten. And to ensure that we get the outcomes for the community that we know they deserve, the Greens will be supporting it. And the Greens will continue to further efforts in every state and territory. And you can be assured, and we know the level of support for voluntary assisted dying right across the Australian community, so you can be assured that we will be working across party lines to make sure that all Australians have access to compassionate end-of-life laws. Finally, I wanted to just finish with my thoughts and my love going out to Harry's family, his son Henry, his daughters Gail and Jenny, and all of his friends, and in fact to all people who through this debate are thinking about their loved ones, thinking about the death of loved ones, thinking about their loved ones who are currently suffering, and hope that the passage of this legislation is just another step forward so that all Australians are going to have the choice to die a peaceful and good death.